consistently is one of the members that is currently running for consul, part of the recall slate. His name is Steve Lamar. So if you think, by the way, both sides have been vandalized. If you think this is okay, the people in this town elected this current consul, that it's okay to start a recall immediately before they had even done anything. They started the recall. This is what they've done. In addition to that, the former consuls bankrupted this town. These gentlemen are doing their best, and they're doing it for free. Sure. Slander? Well, I got proof right here, sir. You want to accuse me of slander? Yes. Okay. What? This isn't even completed yet, sir. This is a public. No, what I said, sir, is that the signs have been vandalized. The sign that's adjacent to the sign is Steve Lamar. I don't even know who Steve Lamar is. I just find it peculiar that these signs that have been vandalized, the sign next to it is Steve Lamar's sign. I don't know if there's a connection or not. I'm just stating the opposite for him. But yes, Steve Lamar, my neighbor wanted me to say that. It's funny because an honest man like that, well, I'm happy to bring that shirt to that presidential shirt because I went around and collected signatures. I was one of the people that in the local paper, Steve Lamar called coward. That's what he almost said verbatim. All the people that collected signatures, a coward. No idea. So I went to the local paper and I told Don, nobody's done it. Sure. Steve Lamar called me. Steve Lamar, give me a call. He never called me. If I knew where Steve Lamar lived, I would go to his house with a petition. Okay, good. How about if you want Steve over here tonight? Bring to my attention, please. This is ridiculous. I've been a resident of this town for 35 years. And then we started saying, let's get rid of these guys. That's their job. Before they even won the seats, they started really
and a history minor in college.
Oh,
Well, it's not my camera, I was asked to do it, so, you know.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to start the forum, and we have a few people out in the hallway. If you could make room, get the last few chairs in, we'll get the program started here in just a couple of minutes. Thank you all for coming this evening. How's the temperature out there? We chilled it down. Is it hot or cold? Better? Okay. If it gets hot, somebody stop the program and turn it down. Last few folks coming in here. I'll go ahead and get the basics out of the way. My name is Ray Stark. I was asked to be the timer for this event tonight. I'm going to time the candidates and the questions and the responses by the candidates. There was a question raised, why are we doing this event in what appears to be a town facility? This facility is for rent, and it was rented by the sponsors of this event. You can rent this facility yourself. We thought it was a lot closer than going to Paradise Valley Community College. That's why it was chosen. What will happen tonight is there will be a 3-minute intro by each of the candidates, and then there will be a public question session. The questions will be generated by the public at large. We don't know what those questions are. The public will have 30 seconds to ask those questions, and then the council members or candidates will have 1 minute each to respond to those questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the moderator for this evening, and that's Judge Clancy Jane.
Well, good evening, folks. The good news is the only people that I know here I've seen in the parade, they haven't been defendants in my court, so we're off to a good start. Now, prior to being a judge, I served in the legislature, and one of the things that happens in the legislature is all sessions are started with the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer. I hope nobody's offended by that, but I'm going to ask you all stand and let's do the same. Thank you for the freedom that we have in our country, that we can come and have debates such as this. Bless everyone here to have an open mind and a courtesy mind, and bless everybody on their way home. Amen. Please have a seat. Just to reflect, we have cards here which I'll pull once we start, and then the person whose name I call will come up, ask their 30-second question, and then allow the proper person to answer. Correct? Okay, I think each candidate has an opportunity to make an opening statement. Why don't we start on this end with the good-looking guy with the ponytail?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Charlie Spitzer. I've been on council for 18 months now. We're having a recall election, not a general election. General election was scheduled for about 18 months from now, so in about a year or so, we're going to start this all over again. Seems like a waste of time and money to do so. Recall election, you have to give some reasons why you want to recall the person that you're going against. Mr. Lamar's leveled 3 charges against me. First is that I'm not transparent. About 4 years ago, during Mr. Lamar's tenure on council, I asked for a Freedom of Information Act request for council emails. You know how many I got? 0. They don't have any emails. 2 days after we took the oath of office, all of the elected officials had town emails. And shortly after that, there's a terminal right across the street here in the building. You can go and read any email that we have, either sent or received. Mr. Lamar's level charges that we make secret deals in executive sessions. Well, Mr. Lamar is an attorney. He worked for the state, should know the laws. He was on town council for 4 years, he should know the law. At those executive sessions, there were 7 councilmen up here. The town manager's a lawyer, the vice mayor's a lawyer. There was at least 2 town council attorneys, and there's probably at least 2, if not more, other attorneys from outside council. It seems to me that there would be a conspiracy of between 12 and 18 people to commit crimes during those executive sessions. Mr. Lamar hasn't given me any proof, has he? He just can level accusations. The second one is that we spent too much money. Well, shortly after we took office, we were handed a letter from the state. They were going to censor the town because of the court system. There was thousands of dollars that we would have had to spend to fix the court system. Instead, we reduced the head count by 3, moved and joined forces with Carefree. We saved $200,000 the first year, and every year after this, we'll save more. There's complaints that we're spending too much money on plans. Well, that's what towns do. They plan for the future. The town didn't have any capital improvement plans, maintenance plans, infrastructure plans. Every 10 years, the town is required to redo its development fees. Guess what the input to that plan is? The state says it has to be done by a third party. Guess what the input is? The plans that we didn't have. So that's why we spent money. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing things that were broken or about to break. We were going to be cited by the CAP for unsafe electrical conditions at our pump stations. No maintenance had been done for years. The roads hadn't been maintained for years. Of course we're spending money. We're trying to catch up. We still got more things to do. Every month it seems we find more things that are broken that we shouldn't have had to have found. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Just continue down the same order. Adam?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming, and a special thank you to Judge Clancy Jane for making time this evening on very short notice. We had secured a moderator from Arizona State University who was unable to be with us this evening, and Judge Jane volunteered to fill in, so let's hear it for him. And on that note, thanks to all of you for being here tonight, taking time out of your schedules to get educated on what the recall means and what this council has done for you over the course of the past 18 months. Charlie did a great job explaining sort of the fallacy behind the 3 stated reasons for the recall. Let me see if I can shine just a little bit more light on that. In 2013, the citizens of Cave Creek successfully removed the yoke of Sonora News influence from its local government and installed a council that was committed to fiscal responsibility, preserving the desert rural lifestyle, and making this town hall operate in an efficient and transparent manner. Over the course of the last 18 months, Charlie mentioned we merged the courts. We took a number of other measures to increase our efficiency. We reduced some of the onerous procedures and operations at Town Hall, other things, and we managed to realize a $1.2 million savings in the first budget that we created over the year prior. In terms of transparency, our emails are accessible to all of you. Our check register is now posted online. And we have a standardized portal for public records requests, whereas public records requests were previously handled sort of on a whimsical basis based on who they felt like responding to. As far as our fiscal responsibility and our transparency goes, I really believe that our record is unmatched in the history of the governance of this community. And with regards to preserving the rural lifestyle, this council's taken steps to ensure that the property rights that people who move into desert rural zones are secured. For instance, we restored horse privileges to non-conforming lots in DR 89 and DR 190 zones that were less than 2.5 acres. I don't know if you knew that, but in Scottsdale and Phoenix, if you're in a rural zone, you can have horses no matter what acres you have. Historically, in Cave Creek, you had to have 2.5 acres. We made it so non-conforming lots in those zones that were under 2 acres had their privileges restored. We've been facing this recall literally since the week that we were sworn in. We knew it was coming. Knowing it was coming, naturally, we've been prepared for it. But the travesty here really is that a lot of you folks may or may not be adequately informed. That's because our local newspaper does a great disservice to this community by only printing information that supports its agenda. They put up 4 candidates who apparently are not here with us this evening. I gave them 3 opportunities to attend. I only got 1 RSVP for no. I think it's a mistake for them not to be here. They forced this recall. The signatures were circulated by for the petition. Well, I'll get into that later. I appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening. I'll pass it off to my colleagues.
Good evening, folks. I'm Mike Durgan. Thank you all for coming. I thought a lot about what I was going to say, and almost all of it has already been said. I usually get dinged for talking too long, so I'm going to keep this real short. As the Vice Mayor mentioned, the recall was threatened before we were even seated. So I want to plant this seed in your thoughts tonight. If the Arizona statutes provide for the recall of publicly elected officials for misbehavior in office, and the recall was started before we were even seated, you got to ask yourself the question, what's behind the recall and what's the thinking? I'll just leave you with that thought. I really look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. In the essence of time here, I'm here because Dick Esser has made accusations against me. In circulating petitions for the recall, he has accused me of fiscal irresponsibility. Now, this comes from a gentleman who voted to put the town $65 million in debt. This comes from a gentleman who said yes to the town, paid $1.2 million because the town built a water tank on land it didn't own. That's fiscal irresponsibility. He has also accused me of lack of transparency in the operation of the town government. Well, we have the town's check register online. Every single check the town writes is open for the world to see. I don't think that would have happened in the previous administration. Budget workshops are open to the public. We had one on Monday. It wasn't there. The audit report is made available to the public. And finally, his last accusation is that I am guilty of material misrepresentation. I don't know what that means, so I can't respond. I don't know if he knows that either. But here we are now. He's got to run on his record. Let's take a look at his record. Okay? For years on the council, he never did anything to manage responsibly the growth of development on the Carefree Highway. Stagecoach Village sat empty for 7 years. He did nothing. He and the town manager did nothing for a year with the APS 65-foot poles that are in front, or planned to be in front, of Whispering Hills and Estada de Shoya. And finally, well, in short, that's not a very good record. Okay? My record is one of accomplishment. I've stressed financial responsibility. I've worked to reduce the expenses of town. I'm on the town's budget committee, and I'm going to work for smaller government, efficient government. Am I doing on time?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay, big finish. Folks, we need your help in this campaign. We need help from you and your neighbors. We can't turn the clock back. And as my opponent, Dick Esser, says, he wants the town to, quote, go back where it was. No, no. Thank you.
Folks, I want to make a couple things perfectly clear. I don't work here, and I don't have a dog in the fight. Community service is something that is, as is said many times, no good deed goes unpunished. And that happens to many of you and to many different things that you do. Adam texted me today when I was downtown at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, the stand down for homeless and vets that are in serious jeopardy. And if you ever think things are bad, either come to my court and sit in the back room and hear what really happens, or go to an event like this. You know, we have so many blessings, and these are all people that have fought in the military for us. They've come back with burdens from the results of that or whatever, and they've gotten upside down. And there's nobody that I see in the world that deserves to have a second chance than these guys. And today I saw grown men, 40 and 50 years old, who we were able to relieve for their burdens of the justice system. And they came back and showed me their driver's license. Now I'm going to tell you something. When a grown man stands in front of me and cries because he got a silly little driver's license, life is pretty precious. So I hope that we will all be respectful of each other tonight, and let's go through this and hear what they have to say. First lucky person, and you get to set the standard, is John Sellers. John, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually. I'm John Sellers. I've lived in Cave Creek for 9 months. I don't know anybody here. I have no axe to grind. I was very delighted to hear there was a meeting of this type taking place because I don't know anything about the politics of the town. I was a bit taken aback when I came to the public council to hear the Vice Mayor come down from the podium and advertise his website as a means of promoting this event. So I did a record search to find out what was going on, and there's been some email exchanges where I've been accused of being a stooge of somebody. I'm not a stooge of anybody.
Remember, you have 30 seconds, John.
I do indeed. I guess part of my question's been answered. The use of these facilities is arguably based on the fact that this was rented. I didn't see any rental discussions or documents in the 69 pages that the city clerk supplied to me, so maybe she missed it or something happened. Could the candidates please explain that, but also talk about the difference between legality and ethics in politics?
Mr. Sellers, thank you. You mentioned that you had attached the PDF document that the town clerk had sent you to my email. It came through on my phone, and I responded to you this morning on my way to work, and I didn't look at the attachment. I did respond to you quoting the specific statute that says that this use of this facility for the purpose of having a campaign-related event is in fact legal if it's rented. I can tell you that I'm writing a check to the town clerk when I return the key to her on Tuesday morning for the use of this facility here this evening. I'm not really clear on why that would be unethical, albeit legal, if that's what you're people, sort of, conjuring up. As far as the difference between legality and ethics, I mean, I look at ethics sort of as a moral standard of between what's right and wrong. Just because something's legal doesn't necessarily make it right. I think we have a terrific venue here in Cave Creek to have events such as this. This venue has been used in every election that I can remember to have a candidates forum. Historically, those forums were sponsored, ironically, by the Sonora News, who refused to do one during the course of this recall. So I don't see anything unethical about it in this instance, and I appreciate your question.
Our next question, it comes from Judy Lewis.
Are the other candidates going to address that? It wasn't addressed to anybody.
It was sufficiently addressed.
It's been answered.
It was addressed.
Ethics is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. This council is working hard. Right there's a camera. You can watch the town council work. You can do anything. You can sit at home and watch us do the town council. Legality, if you had read the two statements down from the PDF that you sent, it stated quite clearly that the rental of this, as long as it did not conflict with the government-sponsored event, was perfectly legal. Ethically, anybody can rent this hall. I'm not sure what ethics has to do with it. It's available to the public at any time.
Mike?
I guess you had a two-part question. Maybe the second part was a bit philosophical, and that's what you're asking for?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a problem with legality and ethics in politics? I don't think anybody in this room would disagree that there's a problem with legality and ethics in politics. I personally don't feel at this point Cave Creek, this sitting council, has any problems at all that relate to a conflict between ethics and legality.
Brett?
From my 18 months on the council, the primary goal of the council is the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the town. And I, for one, and I'm sure my colleagues, we try to maintain the highest ethical standard in delivering those goals to the citizens.
And I do apologize, John. You have 30 seconds to ask a question, and I need to allow each party in a minute, so I apologize. Thank you for getting me square. Judy, you're still on the hot seat. Judy Lewis.
Okay, I'm right here.
Oh, thank you, very good. Thank you.
I actually have two questions, if I can get them both in 30 seconds. One is for Charlie. Charlie, when you came to my house, when you were out campaigning in the neighborhood, I told you that one of our main concerns was an amendment to the annexation agreement. And I'm just wondering when it might be put on the council agenda. And my other question is, I'd like to know the status of McDonald's. There's rumors that it's coming, it's not coming, whatever, and that's for the council in general.
Perfect. Well, the annexation agreement, there are two pieces of information that were passed to the town attorney about 2 weeks ago. They're having it under review. It's currently scheduled for the March 2nd or 3rd, I forget which, it's the first Monday in March to be on the agenda. The question about McDonald's is, they haven't put anything in front of us. They've put in a plat, they've put in what they plan to do, and whether they are going to do it or not is up to them.
Okay, that would be the developer that was the plat?
Yes.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a response to those questions? Adam? Mike? Reg? Okay. Chaz Lee.
I only got 30 seconds, so I'm gonna make it quick. God bless America, God bless Cave Creek, where the Wild West lives. You know, when somebody challenges somebody in the old code of the West, you gotta answer that call. I call you outside, you best step outside. Strap your boots on, drop your guns, and go fist to cuff. Unfortunately, I don't see these folks here tonight. That right there makes me question their integrity and their honor for the way of life, and the Wild West, and the Western heritage that we are preserving in Cave Creek. God bless America.
Was there a question there? Tom Davenport.
Yes, see if I can phrase this quickly. Adam, you're aware that Whispering Hills has put forward to the mayor a request that you folks consider an undergrounding ordinance to include not only distribution lines but transmission lines, so that we can, if we do end up having those 69 kV lines go down to Carefree Highway, that they're undergrounded if they're on the Carefree Highway side of the road. I wondered if you had any inclination for when that might go before the council and for the council members in general. Just wondered what your positions are, at least in concept, on the idea of passing such an ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport. What he's alluding to is the sighting of APS 69 kV poles on the north side of Carefree Highway in front of his subdivision. Just 10 seconds of history on that. The Arizona Public Service Corporation, APS, had announced that they were contemplating line sightings through the town of Cave Creek about 2.5 years ago. And the current council, upon taking office, made it a priority to address that with APS, whereas the previous council had basically allowed APS to decide where they were going to put the poles. And the route they ultimately decided on was along the north side of Carefree Highway in front of that subdivision. With regards to the specific ordinance that you brought up, you handed me a legal opinion during office hours about 2 weeks ago. I've reviewed that legal opinion, and I've talked with a couple of members of the staff about what the impact of that would be on the town's budget, because as I understand it and doing a little bit of Googling, the consequence is not that if you pass that ordinance, APS has to pay to bury the poles. The consequence is they will bury the poles, but the cost, the burden of paying for that construction lies with the town and the taxpayer at large. And so I'm trying to identify what those costs would be before, and do that analysis before bringing the ordinance forward. At this moment in time, I don't have a date on an agenda to share with you. Probably have to wait till we get through the recall in order to grapple with that.
As far as the facts go, Mr. Davenport, I think the Vice Mayor filled you in on the facts as we know them presently. The other part of your question is, what's our position, individual position on that ordinance? To be quite honest with you, I was involved in a couple of meetings. Well, I'd tell you this anyway, but I've been involved in a couple of meetings. The cost associated with undergrounding just that section, as I recall, approached $1 million. So for me as a responsible council member to pass an ordinance for the town of Cave Creek that was going to burden the citizens with the requirement to pay that kind of money to put lines underground, I'm not saying that I'm against it, but at first blush, I'm not sure it's a financially responsible thing to do to burden the citizens with an ordinance like that.
Thanks, sir. Charlie?
I wasn't party to any of the discussions before, so I had no idea what this ordinance says. Paradise Valley has one like this. Unfortunately, Paradise Valley also had to impose a tax or a per household amount in the order of thousands of dollars to do that. I'm not sure I'd be willing to put that on the town taxpayers to underground every line in the town, or even the future ones. Right now, the developers who are putting in small developments, they aren't doing that anyway, because that's what new developments are expecting to be done. But to pass an ordinance that would cost tens of millions of dollars to do, and put that on the taxpayer, I'd have to see an analysis of exactly what the costs were before I would vote for something.
There has been, Mr. Davenport, I'm sure you know, discussions with regard to legal documents as to where is the right-of-way. Is it on the south side? Does the state land department own it? What's Maricopa County? Who's responsible? I think at some point, somebody's gonna find a document from the Gadsden purchase in 1884 that bears on this. But seriously, if this indeed does come to council, it will not have my support. And in the worst case scenario, if the polls do go up, then the battle continues as to what goes on the polls. They can, or we could do our best to prevent cable being hooked up there, additional data lines hooked up there. And so then you would have dozens and dozens of wires, and it would look like Bangladesh. So this is certainly not going to have my support. We need to wait and see about the legal documents, and the condemnation has begun in the courts. We'll just have to wait to see that turns out.
Thank you, Brett. Our next question person is Dana. Dana? It's the only thing on the card, D-A-N-A. Dana changed her mind. Madeline Hines?
Yes,
I apologize, ma'am, if I...
that's okay. I'm a 45-year resident of Cave Creek. I've had my business, the town dump, for 38 years in Cave Creek. And I have sent a little directive off to various members of the council. I'm tired of the roads being closed in front of my business. I'm tired of traffic being backed up to benefit 3 or 4 bars, while the rest of the small businesses coming down the hill from Carefree, all the way practically to the Episcopal Church, those businesses suffer. These other businesses are renting out their parking lots. So the overflow goes to the highway. The highway is paid for by all of these citizens. They have a right to use it. It is backed up sometimes for a mile or more. And this year, evidently at Motorcycle Days, it's going to land at Easter. So if someone's planning on attending church over Easter, they're going to have to wade through multiple motorcycles. I'm asking you to please stop closing Cave Creek Road. Allow the closure for Wild West Days, for the rodeo, for town businesses or events that the town participates in. Everyone in town.
I think your question's been asked.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. I think you'll remember I was at a meeting with you and some of the other business owners about just that subject. At that time, I suggested to everybody in the room that the business owners needed to come together and bring to council a solution to this problem. Because not all the business owners were not benefiting, and I agree with you, the bars were benefiting more. But I don't think you, the business community, want council to blindly make decisions about closing roads, not closing roads, or whatever, without cooperatively engaging with each other and deciding how this can be handled to the benefit of everyone. So I want to repeat that suggestion to you. Get with the other business owners and bring something back to us that works for you all. Because I'm not a business owner, and if you want the best decision out of council, get with your other business owners and bring something to us that will benefit you.
Thank you, Mike.
I'd like to second what Councilman Durkin said in terms of having the business community work together to come up with a solution to that. I understand that there may be a conflict of personalities and maybe even a conflict of interest in doing that. But to the extent that we all have to share this town, now is an opportune time to do that. A couple of weeks ago, we passed a resolution directing staff to take a look at our town code and review it and make it a cohesive and easy to navigate document with clear provisions for enforcement and things of that nature. As I understand it, the decision to close the roads down are currently made by the marshal per our town code. That's not something that started with this council. Arizona Bike Week and the parades and everything like that predate 18, 19 months ago. We have carried on those traditions to the extent that they're successful in bringing tens of thousands of folks to the town to spend money. albeit with some businesses more than others. So I'd encourage you to get involved and come up with solutions and make those suggestions to staff as they revisit the code. And that's something that, assuming we have the support of the majority of the community, and we're blessed with being able to serve beyond March 10th, that's something that we're prepared to tackle in order to make sure our town remains vibrant.
Either other council have any additional? Charlie?
I'd just like to add further, the town council doesn't have to come up with every idea. There are plenty of people in this community who have plenty of bright ideas. If you're expecting 7 people to make the decisions that every business person would be happy with, that's never going to happen. The business community has to work together. There's a CCMEA, there's other organizations that you can work together and decide what's best for all of you, instead of having the town council impose some rule that benefits this one and not this one, or this one and not that one. It's just that you all have to work together and bring something for us that we can vote on.
There are, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm close. There are over 35 events in town throughout the year. And the town is not the keeper of the schedule. I've always maintained that the town and the merchants, it's a partnership. And we need some help here. For example, we had to move the Fiesta Days Parade a week because the bike people were going to be in town. Okay, we do the best we can, but if through the merchants and the various groups, if we could work out some schedule, it'll go a long way. Thank you.
Okay, our next question is Doug Carpenter.
Just a quick question is, why did the opposing parties have the appearance as running as teams instead of individual merit?
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for them. They're not here. That wouldn't be fair, so I can only give you my perspective. As I mentioned to you, in 2013, the citizens removed the yoke of the Sonora News influence and negligent management from its town governance by electing the 4 of us. From the day that those election results were canvassed, the Sonora News called for a recall election. And they promised that they had candidates waiting in the, in the laurels to come and run against us to restore the town to where it was. I invited them to be here tonight. They should have been here to be able to answer that, but I would suggest that to the extent that we were criticized for being a slate, one has to take a long look in the mirror and think, are we really a slate, since we're here as a team, the 4 of us, running against the 4 guys we criticized as being slate members. If I still have a few seconds, where the town was, we have $60 million in debt, which is why we don't have the discretionary income to bury our power lines, because we built out an infrastructure and acquired an infrastructure far beyond our needs, and then we promptly decided not to maintain it and to operate it at a loss instead of managing our resources efficiently. We weren't cleaning screens, we weren't servicing pumps, we were allowing backflow pumps and things of that nature to go uncorrected, and that resulted in a drastic increase in what otherwise would have been a modest deficit. So I'll leave it at that.
Mike?
I can't answer your question as to why they accuse us of being a slate and appear to be a slate. And I don't think it really bears, on the real issues. I think, as you've heard, there's no substance to this recall. There's a lot of misinformation. I'll just give you one quick little bit that I think is an eye-opener. We have been continuously accused of spending $80,000 on a piece of software for our road maintenance. That's what is printed. Here's the facts. We spent $80,000 on a study that sent people out to evaluate every linear foot of road in the town of Cave Creek to determine what maintenance schedule was going to be necessary to keep your roads in shape. We spent $1,200 on the software that uses that data. That's the truth, but that's not what you read in the local tabloid. Thank you.
A lot of the rhetoric is mainly due to the fact that we beat them and they want back in power. And if you listen to the criticism, the complaints, we're doing a bad job, you guys are terrible, just listen and hear. You don't hear any solutions. You don't hear any alternatives. You don't hear of a better way to do things. All you hear is, this slate is terrible. We each have action plans. We have specific objectives. But the rhetoric just continues with the group. And we're gonna stay the course. And we're gonna keep moving forward. And we are not, quote, go back to where we were, unquote.
You see opposing signs all over town. It's either a slate or a team. It's like potato or potato. It's the same thing. It just depends on whether you want to call something a bad name or a good name for it. The town council you have has been striving to fix things that have been broken for years, years and years, maybe a decade or so. Keep on finding new things to fix. I don't think we're ever going to run out of things to fix now. And unfortunately, you the taxpayers are going to pay for it all. About $6 million a year leaves this town just in interest payments on the bonds. The whole budget is only $17 million.
Okay, our next question here is Bob Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I first have a question to you, and I hope it doesn't go off my 30 seconds.
No problem.
My questions were to be directed to the other candidates, and I'm hoping, since I suspect that a reporter, either formally or informally, is here from the newspaper, that I would like to ask this question publicly, and perhaps they can respond to it in their paper. But if you rule that not...
That seems quite appropriate, and won't count that as your 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. This question is for Steve Lamar. Steve, after serving Cave Creek for many years, why do you think so few citizens voted for you in the last election and had you coming in dead last? Second question is for Dick Esser. Dick, being a man of great principle, which he is, how did you feel about the town paying your legal bill when you changed your mind about pulling out of the last election? Thank you.
Nobody's blind, so ladies, I know it's been a while since we've heard from the fair sex, but Mary Weiss, it's your turn.
Well, a lot of the statements have already been answered, but I think I was the one vote that won you, young man. And I can only hope that it'll be again. Appreciate the integrity of everyone here and being here. And I think it's a huge statement, as the young man had said there, that if the opposing people aren't here to say their claim, I'm no judge. By the grace of God, I've never been in the court. But at least I think that's a statement of fairness to say you have the two sides to say. Just as an off thought, I don't know who it is that's doing the timing. Is that an actual facilitator? Or just someone here? Oh, then thank you. All right. Thank you for your integrity.
I'd like to answer that implicit question in there. You were asking why they chose not to show up. Basically, the answer was they're calling this a publicity stunt. They sent that in emails to the four of us and to other people like the newspaper and whatnot. What they're doing instead, and you may have read this in the Sonora News, that there's a forum at PVCC that Rancho Mignona is sponsoring. What they really haven't told you is that that's not a public forum. No one here, unless you own a house in Rancho Mignona, can get in there. But why are they saying that people should come to the public forum that they're going to be at on the 21st for Rancho Mignona? So that's something to ask them.
You guys been invited to that forum?
Yes.
And you'll attend?
Yes, we've all four have been invited, and all 8 candidates will be there, but none of you can be there.
Address the open meeting laws.
Oh, yes, there will be, because it's a non-public meeting, we can't be there all at the same time. What they're going to do is split us apart, and before the meeting, some of us will appear before, some of us will be after, open meeting law violation. That's caused because it's a private meeting.
Mary, you have more answers to a non-answered question if anybody
We're going to take the liberty of chiming in on that one too, because a minute just seems like way too short to answer all these questions, and that raises a good point. And I tried to get this thought out during the introductory remarks, and now I've used up half of my minute. But I sent out 3 emails about this forum this evening. I asked them all to come. The fact of the matter is this, folks. I think that the public deserves to hear from everybody, particularly those who are forcing a $30,000 taxpayer expense to have the recall. And I wanted it to be fair and open, and I took the initiative to organize this. 2 of the guys who are running on the recall team sat on the council for 4 years without a single agenda item. That shows you what their initiative is. And they didn't answer the call by saying, no, we're not going to attend your forum, it won't be fair and unbiased. But we'll organize our own, and you're welcome to attend that. They just no-showed.
I'm going to ask our moderator if we could take 2 minutes. There's 4 empty chairs up here, and there's people standing out there.
Oh, sure.
Can we move these chairs out there? And
Perfect idea.
Absolutely. Ladies, out there in the foyer, come on in.
Okay, our next question here is Suzanne Rifle.
Gentlemen, so I moved here from Atlanta about 4 years ago. I absolutely love Cave Creek, and one of the things that I love most about it is our extensive and beautiful open space. Equestrian trails, shared trails for bikes, obviously hiking trails. I was just on Black Mountain a minute ago before this meeting. So my question is, I'm confused and I don't know the facts, and I'd like to understand. Open space is one of the tenets of this community, semi-rural, preserving that lifestyle. And I understand that there is a budget for open space, trail maintenance, those sorts of things. And I understand there's also been some sweep out of that budget to a more general funded, I don't know what the language is, general funding. Can you all help me understand, was that temporary? Was that done in a transparent manner? Are we planning to bring the money back? Do we have other priorities that are now trumping open space? Help me understand that so I know where my love and where this council is at in terms of protecting the open land.
I'm going to ask maybe one of my colleagues to yield a minute, because this is a lengthy answer.
Right, I appreciate that.
So the town of Cave Creek is approximately 40 square miles, and approximately 50% of that land is designated open space. Some of that land, a large chunk of it, is Spur Cross Recreation Area, which in the early 2000s, the citizens voted for a property tax to pay for the acquisition cost of that property. And concurrent with that, the council passed a half-cent sales tax that would then be incumbent on every purchase in the community that would be used to fund the maintenance of that open space. Cut. Next section. We have a large chunk of land, some 4,000 acres zone designated open space, is actually owned by the state land department, And as part of that annexation agreement, to bring it into our incorporated borders, we have 20 years with which to acquire that property, and that agreement was signed in 2008. So we now have 14 years to acquire that property, going on 13. What this council did, we had a surplus from that half-cent tax for the maintenance of Spurcross, okay, because the costs to maintain that park aren't high enough to use the entire amount of revenue collected, in large part because we have more cash registers in town than we did at the time that that space was required. And what we've done is we've decided that we would bifurcate those funds and bring half of them into a separate account to be used for the acquisition costs of the annexed state trust land. In no way, shape, or form are we shifting priorities, quite the contrary. There 5-some years ran on that annexation agreement during the previous administrations without a single step towards securing that open space. This council has gone above and beyond that, and we're now trying to put together a fund to help with that acquisition cost. Beyond that, the acquisition cost of that land is probably going to be somewhere in the realm of $20 million, okay? There's no way that we can afford that without a property tax, and the citizens may support that. But absent that, we've come up with some ideas, some of which we discussed with the State Land Department, but were shot down, and now we're reworking them. These things take time. To do either a density transfer for a portion of the 4,000 acres, which would increase the value for the state land holdings, and that would be given back to us as a credit to use towards the leasing that open space, and then we'd be able to get it open to the public right away, usable for trails. That is something that I've been working on personally over the course of over a year. It moves very slowly, and the fact that we no longer have Vanessa Hickman as a state land director kind of hurts us, and I'm being buzzed off. But I appreciate your question, it's an important one, and you don't read the facts about that in the Sonora News because they want you to believe that we've done something horrible with the half of that 0.5% sales tax revenues. And that's
So
not the case.
just to be clear, Adam, are you saying then that that money is in play and being purposed, and is it somehow making an is interest being built on that money that was, whatever the word bifurcate means, whatever that,
Split.
Yeah, okay, so are you saying that that money is whole and in fact earning interest and being directed toward that future
I
acquisition?
can't tell you that it's earning interest because I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't want to speak out of turn.
Okay.
But it is purposed.
Okay.
It's not being spent for anything else. The other reason why that was so important is because we all know the state and the county are having budget issues. Right. And if we didn't, that half-cent is collected by the state and sits in an account. And if we didn't take the opportunity to bring it in-house, okay, there would be the opportunity for the state or the county to sweep those funds to use for something else. So actually what we did was we preserved the money that wasn't going to be used for the maintenance of Spurcross Recreation Area and saved it from it potentially being swept by the state or the county to subsidize their deficits.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question here is CW.
I think that I would ultimately make a statement, so I think that I will, you guys know of my support for you, and I'll let someone else ask a question.
Okay, thank you. Don Teslo, Tedeslo,
That'd be me, and that was close.
I help me so I don't mess it up again.
Tedesco.
Tedesco. Thank you, Ted. Or Don.
First of all, Don, I'd like to thank you guys and the other members of the council for the work that you've done under the adverse conditions created by the newspaper. It must be very difficult, knowing that you live in a fishbowl. Everything you say is going to be criticized if possible, and to continue to do that work is admirable. The question that I have, I talked to Mr. Trank here tonight. It's the first time I've ever met him, and I don't know that I've ever met any of the others. And this is directed towards the recall efforts, and in listening to the various charges against each of you in the recall petitions, I don't recall any of them being that you have fired the past city administrator, or whatever his position is. And question that I have is, given the fact that you all, prior to being elected, at the last general election, you all stated that one of the purposes was, that you had in mind, one of your plans was to change the administration of town hall because of some of the things that have been said to you. And you were elected and seated, and that's what you did. So am I missing something here? How can they continuously, I'd say they, Sonora and newspaper and whatever his name is. I don't know.
Don
because
is his name.
Don, wrap up your question, Don.
What's your
question?
My question is, am I missing something? Am I missing something here?
No, unfortunately, you're not. There's a really good propaganda technique that's being used on all of you. It was done in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, probably in the 80s, and now it's starting up again. It's called the big lie. You make up something outrageous and tell it loud enough and long enough, sooner or later people start to think maybe some of it, part of it's true. You know, it happened in the Red Scare, you know it happened in World War II, you know it happened in Vietnam, it just happens all the time. That's what's being used against you. And there are people in the community who have bought into things. So no, you haven't missed anything.
No, unfortunately, you haven't missed anything. And I'd like to take an opportunity here, because it's kind of like the 800-pound gorilla in the room, that question, okay? Why did we immediately get rid of the town manager? I can't give an answer for these three gentlemen here. I can only give you my answer, and I will tell you folks that it was a very hard decision, but I was brought to that decision between the time I was elected and the time I was seated. Because during that time, in my interfacing with the town manager, it became very clear to me that he not only was not in support of the programs that I had promised the people of Cave Creek that I would undertake, but he would actively prevent me from getting my job done. At that point in time, I'm stuck. I told the citizens of Cave Creek I would do X. I was not going to be allowed to do X. That's why I made the decision that I made.
Reg, Adam? Okay, very good. Our next question here is Ian McLary?
McCall.
I apologize, sir.
I have a question for this council, even though I know that you have not had this issue presented in front of you, and that's the issue of zip code for Cave Creek. It's just the zip code, not counting parts of Phoenix and parts of Scottsdale, but just have our own zip code. Because if we have our own zip code, it's going to create higher property values, less taxes, less insurance, and I don't see why it can't get done. I mean, can we get congressional support to get this done? Carefree does. Scottsdale does. Can you each address that?
I think it's about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I tackled this subject for about the fourth time. And I'll spare you all the gory details. The answer's no. You suggested going to Washington. Well, the two gentlemen did, T.K. Palmer and Tom Darlington. When they designed and built Carefree, they indeed got on a plane. And they went to Washington, talked to their congressman, and got 85377. You can't do that anymore. Okay. In talking to the postmaster, the zones are whacked up so that there's about 25,000, give or take, residents within a zip code, excepting Carefree. Okay? So we suggested that make 85327 a unique to Cave Creek, not just the post office. No, that's not enough citizens. So it is extremely difficult working with the post office. They have their rules, and unless you've got ballpark 25,000 people, this 85331 is going to stay the same in the same geographic area. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer.
Gentlemen, anything to add? Okay, hearing none. Robert Levy.
Yes. I have a comment or two and then one question. It's a very general question. The first comment is, this room may not be optimal for one reason or another as people perceive it, but it beats the heck out of being in the middle of Spur Cross Road. The second thing is that it's unfortunate that we are in a unilateral building here, or a unilateral meeting, because it really should be open to everybody. And it's perfectly clear that most people in this room support one side of this argument. The third thing is that I object to everybody bashing the Sonoran Youth. It has a very vital function in my household. It lights all the fires in my it's expensive.
Mr. Levy, I want to point out something. I got to point out something. This is not trying to get on one of the night TV shows.
My question is a general question. If I were to say, okay, I have $2 million I'm going to put in the general fund of Cave Creek, but the only stipulation being that you have to spend it for the benefit of this town, current and future, within 1 year, how would you spend it?
Oh, good question.
I'll go first. That's a great question, and that's a luxury that I really wish that we had, and I could waste my minute explaining why we don't, but instead I'm going to try and address the question. We just recently passed or adopted a MAG study that incorporated not just the bicycle lanes, which we're working on putting in with federal grants, but also to increase the equestrian and pedestrian connectivity throughout the town core. And I think that that's a vital element to the vibrance of our commercial corridor. I also think that some of that money, if managed properly, could then be used to help maintain those trails that we already have in place, not just in Spur Cross, where we know we have money for, but we have other trails, great trails, and we have great volunteers who help to maintain them. But if we got them on some sort of a regular maintenance schedule, and this was money that we didn't need to use for anything else, because we're talking about wants versus needs, this is a want, and I think I would put it there to make sure that the trails were properly maintained, and we could have sort of decomposed granite pathways to connect all the merchants, and that were safe for hikers and bikers and horseback riders. And I don't know if $2 million would do it or not.
$2 million? I'm going to agree with half of what the Vice Mayor said and disagree with the other half. We have a lot of extra energy in this town and people willing to volunteer. I think we could get our trail maintenance done almost for free. I like the idea of sidewalks to increase traffic, but I also really like the idea of fleshing out our fire hydrant system, which presently is woefully underserved, okay, so that our residents can start paying less for their house insurance because they actually have fire hydrants within 800 feet of their house that are functioning. So that would be one of the biggest priorities I'd see for that money.
Well, I'm afraid $2 million isn't going to cut it for all of the wants of the town. That's a really good question. I think the one thing that could benefit the town's general aura, I could say, is a place to park cars that's off the main street. That would benefit the town, it would benefit the merchants, it would benefit the traffic, it would open up so much more openness in the town core, that we could hold these events that would impact the citizens, that would help it would solve this lady's problem, it would solve the traffic problem, it would solve the health, safety, and welfare, because if we only have 2 lanes of traffic, 1 lane each way, and there's an accident, the fire truck can't get there.
Doctor, thank you for the question. I'm going to take a financial angle to this. The town currently owes, I'm not going to get this right, but it's about $52 million. The debt service on this is $4.9 million every year, leaves the town to pay for the principal and interest. Now, if we didn't have to send $4.9 million away, would we have the best roads in the state of Arizona? We sure would. Would we have the lowest water rates in the state? We sure would. But that $4.9 million is 30% of the town's revenue. We don't have a lot of wiggle room here. We're just working on the budget for fiscal 16, and we're trying to judge the revenue. I'm getting to the answer, Doctor. I would take the $2 million and pay down debt. And that would free up the resources, the revenues that we have to provide more services like better roads and lower water rates and the unanticipated maintenance that hasn't been done for the last 8 years with regard to the wastewater treatment plant as well as the water treatment plant.
Everybody's answered the question. Okay. Next question is from James Hartman.
Hello. You know, it's kind of awkward because it's not really a debate, and I didn't vote for any of you in the last election.
Security.
So I would debate with you. That I cast the vote that won you the initial election. But I have one thing to say, and that's the fact that the challengers aren't here tonight, and rest assured they do not have my vote in the upcoming recall election. You guys have my vote. I think you've done a great job with the town, and I appreciate your service to the town. And it's a shame that the people that have caused a tremendous mess to our community aren't here tonight to defend themselves. So thank you very much.
Well, first of all, thank you. And next, you know, we've been treated pretty easily up here, folks, and I doubt that every single one of you is an ardent supporter of the 4 gentlemen that are sitting here in front of you. So this is a friendly meeting. Nobody's carrying any firearms. I'd really like to hear some hard questions from whomever might be here from the other side. Take your best shot. See if we actually can answer the questions that I suspect is burning in your mind. Ma'am?
Although I've been accused of supporting you all blindly, it's not true. As far as I'm concerned, this is an election. Yes, it's a recall election. No, I'm not in favor of this recall election, but it's being put in front of me as a voter, and I'm gonna vote. And I need to hear from you, I need to hear from the challengers, and I'm gonna figure out some way to hear from those challengers. My burning question is, who among you is dedicated to finding the resources, and resources I mean dollars, and I mean town resources, to finally finishing sidewalks in Cave Creek. It is health, safety, welfare. It is bonding us as a community. I walk my son to school every morning on Spur Cross. It's a nightmare. You try and walk all over town, it's a nightmare. the least we can do for ourselves, for each other, is have this.
Ma'am, we have the question. Now, since
Thank
you used invisible ink when you filled out
I
this
did.
blank card, what would your name be?
Kim Brennan.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question, Kim. I think sidewalks are important. I think equestrian pedestrian connectivity throughout the town core is important. I also think that it's a want and not a need. And at the risk of losing your vote, I don't think even if we were to be retained in our council seats and have the next 18 months to serve you, I don't think we'll get to it. The bike lanes are coming. We've got federal grant money that's helping to pay for that. This council has dug deep to get to the bottom of our skepticism and appreciate the opportunity that the federal money presented and to do that for this community, despite maybe some ideological conflicts about taking that money. I'm speaking for myself. But to sit here and tell you that in the next 18 months I'm going to find the $2+ million that's going to cost to finish streetscape for the town core, I don't think it can be done. What we're working on right now is, and Reg alluded to this, is coming to terms with the fact that we're probably going to generate approximately $1.5 million less in the next fiscal year than we did this year, not because we're doing anything wrong, but because the state shared revenue sources are going to be reduced because we have a new governor and he's going to be managing things differently. And so we're going to have to be even more efficient with the resources that we have while we continue to tackle the problems that we inherited, which include a wastewater treatment plant that's operating at about 35% of capacity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an honest answer.
It's
I
honest. Let me
recognize
just
it may
point
not
out
be
that
the
it
answer
could
you want.
generate more revenue that you so badly need.
Appreciate that.
Sorry, can't be sorry.
You want to hear from all of us, right?
Mike, please.
Okay. I think sidewalks would be great. Carol and I rode over to Greasy Girls the other night, and after fighting our way through the potholes, it finally got to the little sidewalk part, and I thought, wow, this is great. Wish it was all the way up and downtown. As you know, this town has a really high debt. We've got a lot of things to pay for. We've got a water system that every time we pick up a rock, there's another scorpion underneath it. And I know you're getting tired of hearing that, but I think you'd rather have your water continue to flow into Big Girls than you would have sidewalks all the way to the bus stop.
Quickly reiterating, this is leveraging community resources. Again, we're
Yes.
talking volunteers, we're talking contractors,
Yeah.
and money. Who would be?
So let me finish to answer your question of where I stand on that. Actually, at the budget meeting on Monday, we discussed sidewalks. We discussed the acquisition of easements from various business owners. Some will, some won't. I've got a meeting with Ian on Tuesday before the council meeting to go over the plan for the bike path, because I don't understand why, I'm told there's a minimum 80-foot easement on Cave Creek Road. The U.S. Department of Transportation arterial widths for each single lanes are 10 to 12 feet. So it's not clear to me, and this will just address the easement issue, it won't address the financial issue, but we need to have easements if we're gonna put the sidewalks in there. Anyway, I don't understand why with 80 feet, we can't get 4 lanes, plus a turn lane, plus 2 5-foot bike lanes, and have room for sidewalks. So I'm sure that there's probably a reason, but anyway, to answer your question, that's what
Thank you.
that's where I stand.
Charles?
Well, the town simply doesn't have any money to put sidewalks all the way up Spur Cross and all the way through town. If you came to the budget meeting on Monday, Bambi had a chart or a map of Cave Creek Road, which showed where we do have easements and where we don't for various kinds of paths, horse, bike, or walking paths. There's about, I would guess 40% of town where there's no easements. The merchants who own, or the people who own the land simply won't let the town build sidewalks there. That would be up to the merchants. The town can't force them to give up their land and their land rights. We can ask, and some have and some haven't. The town can find volunteers to put in bike paths. There's a MAG study underway right now. The town, last year we funded it a few tens of thousands of dollars, and the state and the county kicked in like $200,000 to to finish the MAG study that was presented to us. And that had the paths that you're asking for throughout most of town. The problem is, who's gonna pay for all that?
Rich?
At the budget meeting on Monday, we touched on this subject. And I maintained that Cave Creek's main industry is tourism. And we're not gonna have big box retailers here. And so we ought to be playing on our strengths. We have ballpark 30, 35 events, and a substantial amount of tax revenue is generated by events and tourism. I got about $80,000 in fiscal 15 budget for economic development. That was broad enough, and I figured it would cover a lot of sins or get a lot of things done. We haven't spent most of that yet, and so I'm still hoping that we can emphasize this tourism angle, play on our strengths. Sidewalks is a big piece of it. Folks can't get from one end of town to the other, and so all I can say is working on it.
Gentlemen? Our next question here is Mark Malin, or Malin.
Questions have been answered, but, you know, I'd like to, we've got about 22 vets a day committing suicide in this country. And most of these guys fought for this country for transparency. And first of all, I'd like to thank you, Judge Jane, for, you know, helping a lot of these guys. And it's an emotional situation in stand down. And appreciate your volunteering there, sir. And I worked in a lot of third world countries. I'm a combat vet. And I saw a lot of countries where there was no transparency. And it was a joke as far as the government, and worked under dictatorships. And it seems to me like the way things were run in this town for a long time, and the way budgets, where there was no transparency on budgets, particularly, and you could not go online, you could not have see where money was actually being spent. That it was very similar to a third world country, and our federal government's to a large extent run like that right now, where there are deficits that are unbelievable. But I want to thank you guys for at least setting a standard. You know, I don't agree with everything you do, but you know, nobody's going to agree on everything. So, thank you.
Okay, our last question person is Bruce Arlen.
Good evening. I think it's not an accident that four of you are here tonight. It's not an accident that the four recall activists, I stand that up, are not here tonight. I find it interesting that they are not shouting to the rafters why they recall individuals. It's really outrageous that they're not defending themselves. Anyway, having said that, if any one of you lose, and I'd like, if you can, each one of you answer this, if any one of you lose, what is likely to happen to this town? And how would you make that happen? Thank
I left my mind reading hat at home tonight, but we really can't tell you what's going to happen. We're doing the best job that we can. We're being honest. We're being as open as we can with the town finances in the town. Communications. We're uncovering things and we're telling people. The word doesn't happen to get out because the tabloid doesn't seem to want to cover anything positive happening in town. The majority that we hold, they call us a slate. We've been accused of voting as a slate. Well, I think Mr. Lamar came up with the fact that 94% of the time I voted with Amtrak. Well, he didn't tell you the rest of the story. There's probably 85% of all votes, or 7-0 votes up here. So, what does that say? If the majority is lost, there'll be more split votes. It'll go one way or the other. Depends upon what's going to come up. I believe that if Mr. Lamar, he's the only one running against me, I believe he's a big proponent of the property tax. I believe that he'll try it again.
Thanks for that question, Mr. Garland. My biggest concern, and nobody can predict the future, but my biggest concern of what would happen is an attempt to return town hall to an environment where you didn't argue with the town manager. There was a strong hand who directed everybody to do exactly what the town manager wanted to do. Right now, there's from time to time, there's some strong personalities in the town environment, some very talented people, and as a result, some disagreements. Now, I think that's healthy because you have different people who are experts in different areas, and those people in general, I think, their guidance should be followed, but their decisions need to be tempered by observations and criticisms from outside. Presently, that is happening very effectively in town hall. And I would hate to see us return to an environment where strong technical or opinions were cast aside and not noticed to the detriment of our utilities infrastructure, which is exactly what was happening before.
Three big fears of what happens if we lose this election. First big fear, on July 10th, 2013, Don Sorchek wrote in his newspaper that the path to Usama's return is the recall election. What does that mean? That means fiscal irresponsibility, neglecting maintenance. The recall candidate who's running against me says that the biggest issue the town has right now is that the striping on spur cross and schoolhouse roads are not bright enough. First of all, that didn't happen in the 18 months since we've been sitting here. The maintenance of the roads had been neglected. It takes more than 18 months for lines to fade. But the reason that's not happening is because we have money budgeted for it. It'll likely happen at the end of the fiscal year, but we've prioritized our expenditures to make sure that the road repairs that are necessary, like those roads where the asphalt is actually cracking and dilapidating, get handled first. Second big fear. I brought up Usama's name in the last part of the question. This gentleman, former town manager, circulated the petitions to force the recall and then circulated the candidates' petitions to get those 4 folks on the ballot in the recall. If they're elected, they may owe him one. He's suing the town for $3 million. What if they vote to settle and fleece the public trust of millions of dollars to make his lawsuit go away? That's a real possibility, folks. The question that you need to ask, and I didn't hear Mr. Moore ask the question that they should be asked, would they recuse themselves for any vote relating to the management of that lawsuit after Usama helped get them, forced the recall that got them elected? And then the third fear that I have is that our progress, if we don't lose a full majority, but we just lose 1 or 2 seats, the progress will happen much slower. We have lots of wants, lots of needs. We'd like to bury the power lines, we'd like to build sidewalks, but we have other major issues with our infrastructure, and unfortunately we haven't gotten to a lot of that tonight. They're very nuanced, and 60-second answers don't really give us the opportunity to address those issues. But these are things that need to happen with relative expediency, because every day that we don't correct them, it costs us more money to operate our systems, which is less money that we have to fund future needs. And it will just make progress happen slower. In this town, it deserves better than that, and it deserves the best that we can give it. And I'm afraid that the recall challengers, if they're seated, they'll be obstructionists.
In response to Councilman Spitzer, there are a few 7-0 votes. After being elected in June, I think there was a council meeting towards the end of July, and I lost a vote 6-1. And I thought, where's the slate? Where's the love, guys? I'm dying here, 6-1. Partial response to your question is, I'm not going to lose.
Yeah.
I and the council have 2 pages of accomplishments in nearly every category. I have an agenda that I hope to accomplish. I'm not going to lose. I can speculate as to should one of the opposing candidates be elected. I have no doubt that there would be a move towards a property tax. They voted for it last time. Councilman Lamar even funded it, okay? The prospect of $1 million going into the general fund with no strings attached, oh, it's dazzling, it's dazzling. Anything can be done with that money. Property tax never goes away. It had an automatic 2% increase. I guarantee you that would be on the agenda. I think there would be other changes in the administration, and I think our agenda, our progress would virtually grind to a halt. Just one man's opinion.
Each person has a 1-minute closing, 2-minute, I apologize, 2-minute closings, but let me make it a point of personal privilege here. Folks, when you get old, you know, it takes a while to remember what all happened. And at this point in life, I'm that. But tonight, you've given me nightmares for the rest of the week. And here's what I want to share with you, is I went to the legislature because I-17 was part of it. Now, if you think that's easy, it's not. Power line sightings are a nightmare because the Corporation Commission, there's so many things that these gentlemen have nothing to do with. They've mentioned lightly studies. Studies have to be funded to get any transportation dollars. It has to be done in a certain manner. And if you don't do it to the manner that MAG has, they're the fiduciary responsibility for those funds. So it's not easy. And there's so many things that these gentlemen have learned. Adam has a little advantage, you know, he does it for a living, so he's a little more closely associated with land use and such. But let me tell you, there's a big learning curve here. And you've given me nightmares because I was chairman of the Maricopa County Planning Zoning for 8 years. So I was on it for 8 years and I was chairman for 4. Let me tell you what, all of those things, as citizens, we had to get up to speed on. You have a citizen membership here. Just remember, this isn't simple, and there's no 60-second answers to anything. It is so complicated, and there's so many different things that impact them that you just don't understand how complicated this job is, and you learn every day. Now, forgive me, that's way more than I should say, but you've got an opportunity here to keep your areas the way you want it. You know, and just pay attention. Okay, Charles, you started first, so Reg, you're going to start with closing. 2 minutes.
Folks, as this campaign continues, listen to the solutions of the opposing candidates. Listen to the alternatives that they suggest, a better way of doing things. Different ideas. You're not going to hear very much. I have an agenda here. There's a whole bunch of copies here. Please take one. It covers finances, business development, desert rural lifestyle. These are the things I'm going to work on. And we've made a tremendous amount of progress. We have a game plan. We have a track record. And I think with your support, we're going to continue. And I have just one other comment here. The gentleman has handed me a definition of material misrepresentation. It's holding up a shirt and saying it's really a pair of pants.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to show up and be part of the process. You know, this is your town, and the more involved you all are, the more you'll feel like it's your town. And certainly, when you show up at council meetings with ideas, with comments, with criticisms for us, that helps. It helps me anyway do my job. First of all, it lets me know what's important to you, and second of all, it reminds me, hey, I got a job to do here, and I better listen to these people and call them and talk with them about their issues. Anyway, appreciate your support. Thanks for coming. If you have a chance to share your thoughts about us in a positive way with other folks, I'd appreciate that too. Thank you.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, thanks again to all of you who took time out of your day to be here with us this evening and ask the tough questions. It really is important that you all do what you can to make yourselves informed. I know that this might get me sideways with Mr. Sellers, but I'm going to mention my website again. It's adamtrank.com. I have several tabs on that page. I have an actions page that talks about all the things that we've done. I know Reg has a copy of that with him as well. I've got a moving forward page which talks about the things that I'd like to accomplish in the rest of my term. And then, of course, I have some of the issues that the Sonoran News has said claiming to be fact, and I've addressed that as Sonoran Lies Exposed, which really cuts to the heart of why we're here in a recall posture. They have an agenda. Printing the Truth doesn't support their agenda. The fact of the matter is, as the gentleman said earlier, nothing we do makes 100% of the people happy, and you know, sometimes that makes it difficult to sleep at night because you don't want to upset your constituents. You sent us here to do a job, and we take that seriously. But it's a balancing act, and sometimes the decisions that we make, we believe are for the greater good of the community. And if you disagree with us, then certainly the time and the place to demonstrate that disagreement would be with an election. But in 2013, the public elected us for a 3.5-year term, and they had a reasonable expectation that we would spend that time getting the job done. I think we've delivered in large part on most of the promises that we made during that campaign, and I'd like the opportunity to deliver on the rest of them, the ones that have project horizons that go beyond 6, 12, or 18 months. Some of the stuff we may not get to before our 3.5-year term is up, and if in fact that's the case, then maybe we'll run again. But we won't be able to do that without your support in this recall. So please, go to the Town of Cave Creek's website, look at the public records. You can go to the virtual library, you can click on all the resolutions and ordinances that we passed, and you can see what we've done. You can go to my website, you can read the bullet-pointed lists of those things. You can talk to your neighbors, you can talk to your friends, you can call us, you can come to the office hours that we've created every Thursday morning in an effort to make the town government more accessible to you in a less formal setting than the council meeting. It's really, I'm humbled by the presence of all of you here this evening. It's been an honor to serve all of you. Please vote. Your ballots will be in the mail. Tell your friends and neighbors to vote. Thank you for your support.
I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight and spending a couple hours with us, listening to us. We're missing 4 people up here, the challengers. You'd think if this election was important to them, they'd want to be here to address all of your questions too. In the last 18 months, not very many of you have been to town council meetings, although there's a camera right there which you can sit at home and watch them. The 4 challengers haven't been to town council meetings either. You'd think if it was important to them, they'd want to know what was happening and find out the truth of what was really happening firsthand. You'd think that they would want to be involved in town politics or involved in town plans or involved in town something. They're not. They haven't been. They've never been. I've never seen Ms. Clancy. I've never seen Mr. Lipsky at more than 1 or 2 town council meetings in the last 1.5 years. You'd think if it was important to them, they'd really want to be here to see what's happening. This is an important vote. This is your town. You get to say who gets to make the decisions that affect your lives. We're just your representatives, and we're working for you. The other challengers aren't here. And that's an important thing that you need to remember.
Folks, I thank you very much. This is a vital part of our country. If you don't mind, let's bow in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this gathering today, and bless all those veterans that have been talked about today and help them get through their issues, and be sure that they understand that we really thank them for their service. Amen.
Amen.